This is David Tetzlaff. Welcome to the Stickbow Chronicles, brought to you by Blackwidow Bows.
Oh, dynamite, Dave. How's it going, buddy?
It's going awesome. Glad you got your power back. Been looking forward to doing this, Rob.
Yeah, we don't lose power often. And I was just about to fire up the generator, and lo and behold, it came back on. But I'll tell you, those guys, we got 48 hours of big weather rolling through. It's going to be single digits and 40-mile, 50-mile-an-hour winds. So those line crews are going to be working overtime.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Usually we just have that in the summer with hurricanes and storms and stuff, but
Yeah, Florida, you're looking at the Compton Traditional Bowhunters Rendezvous here pretty quick, aren't you? Or no,
next
is it?
week? Yeah, next Friday and Saturday.
That's exciting.
So a lot of the guys are going to start rolling in Wednesday. It's nice. It's only 2 hours up the road from me to get up there and mingle and help out. It'll be my first big game classic. So I'm looking forward to that. We got Mike Minton coming in, which be pretty exciting. I actually occasionally I'll do some DVD reviews for the Compton magazine. So a few months ago, I reviewed his DVD, his solo moose hunts. The guy he's so hardcore. I can't wait to, I met him for the first time in person up in at the June rendezvous last year in Berrien Springs for Compton. We chatted a little bit, but what he does out there by himself is it's incredible. I mean, this is a DVD that, he self-films. It's really well done.
Yeah. I'm not even sure hardcore is the right term because, man, well, I guess Monty Browning did a lot of the similar stuff, but you get an animal like a moose on the ground by yourself. That's daunting enough, but yeah, being in the Alaskan bush and, I don't think at that time when he was doing them, they didn't have, inReach and stuff like that. Right.
He's done some recently. So a lot, he's just so self-reliant because after I watched the DVD, I actually traded a few emails because there's more things I want to know to flesh out my review. And he doesn't even take a book to read in downtime. When you're out there by him, he said, no, I'll take something to write on and I'll think about a story or something else. But when it's being out there, it's a full-time job. You're all by yourself, so you're just taking care of everything. So I guess really there's can't be a lot of downtime when you're in survival mode and you're looking for moose and you've got bears the size of Volkswagen circling your tents. That's you're right. It's beyond hardcore. It's extreme commitment, maybe.
There you go. Yeah. I don't even like myself well enough to spend that much time alone. Before we get too carried away, I need to thank our sponsors, Blackwidow Bows, of course, Selway Archery, the Footed Shaft, who I just got some trad vanes from Terry, and I was looking for right-wing trad vanes. Apparently he doesn't have them and sent me what he had, so just kidding, Terry. And Kifaru International. Appreciate all our sponsors. And David, tell the listeners a little bit about your background. You've got so many irons in the fire. Just get people up to speed on what you do, who you are.
Right now, my two main gigs in the trad world we live in is currently the editor of Walk in the Woods, which is the quarterly publication for Compton Traditional Bowhunters, and I've been doing that for just about a year and a half now. And that was one of those things where, a lot of what you've done has maybe prepared you. I was president of Traditional Bowhunters of Florida for 9 years, and I was kind of ghost co-editing our thrice a year publication and doing some writing. So kind of got me used to the rhythm of reviewing and editing and preparing and so forth. So when I saw they were looking for somebody to take over from Marv, I called Dennis Harper one afternoon. I said, "What's this all about?" And he knew what I was doing for Traditional Bowhunter magazine, the book reviews and things like that. And we bounced some stuff around and what the expectations were, and he must have gone back to the board. A few days later, he said, "You're it." So it's been fun. So what I did with Traditional Bowhunters of Florida and that magazine, but what really prepared me, I think, was mentoring under, by virtue of being one of Don Thomas's many disciples, because I've been doing the book reviews for Traditional Bowhunter magazine for about 6 years now. And it's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, but that's what I like to do anyway. So it's like the perfect side job for me. So, working with Don and TJ, but Don's been a great mentor for a long time for my writing, as has Jay Campbell, who a lot of people know. Jay's written for a lot of magazines, wrote the book Longbow. And when I first had an interest in doing features, I would bounce stuff by Jay, and he was pretty unmerciful, but that's what you need.
Yeah.
You bare your throat to a master and say, how do I get better? And Jay took me under his wing, and first couple of things I sent him, he'd email him back, and that was redlined and that was scratched, and here's a better word, a better phrase, better way to look at it. But and I said this in one of my Compton editorials is, people that want to write, because it really is an art to write well. And one day I want to become a good writer. It's just such a craft to keep working at. But one of the hardest things to do is write something and then leave it alone, because you're so anxious. You work hard at something. I want to put it out. I want a magazine to get it. But Jay taught me, just put it on the shelf for a few weeks. You come back, you look at it again, you're going to see it differently. And by goodness, he was right. And that's one trick I learned from him, among others.
It's true in so many aspects of life. If you can't take constructive criticism, right? We never get better at anything. And sometimes you got to swallow your pride. I'm not good at it. My hat's off to you. Sometimes somebody points things out a better way, I kind of bow my neck. But man, it's so important to better yourself, whether we're talking shooting or, life skills. But yeah, my hat's off to you. And I just read, you did a book review on a book about wolves.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It was excellent, man. I don't think I could read that book, but your review was excellent.
I think you could. Really, I happened to, we just took this quick trip last Labor Day weekend. My son, Sasha James, he's a PhD biologist, but where he did his master's was up in Grayling, and Grayling, Michigan, right on the Oswego River. And so he still had access to go up there. So we all kind of met for a long Labor Day weekend last year. And that book on wolves was on the shelf. So I just kind of, borrowed it and, thought it looked good to read and interesting. So, Don gives me a lot of leeway with the column. I mean, we do things that you won't see in a lot of other magazines, as when you look at the articles in TBM, you're going to see things that you wouldn't see in mainstream or hook or bullet, because, Don and TJ want to have some nice variety and expose things to, new ideas. And, my book column, you're going to see strange stuff sometimes, but, Don gives me leeway, but I run everything by him anyway, because he's my boss there. But, that's why what other archery magazine reviewed Tarzan of the Apes? We did. I just saw it on my shelf one day, and I emailed Don and I said, Tarzan was a bow hunter. And he goes, "Yep, you're right. Go for it. Let me see it." And that got the most feedback of any book.
Really?
Any book I reviewed, there were a couple of letters to the editor, there was some stuff online, and I'm like, it just struck a chord with, guys my age who, Tarzan was one of their heroes growing up.
And I believe that's true for all of Traditional Bowhunter magazine. Looking back to when Gene Wenzel, you remember it might have been a 2-part article he did on, you're going to have to help me with the guy's name, Sasha Shamil?
Sasha Seymour. Yep.
Seymour. Yeah. Fascinating, man. Fascinating character. Didn't kind of blurred the lines with traditional bow hunting, or just bow hunting in general. It was all traditional then, but yeah, fascinating. And I had just happened to visit Gene at his house in Stevensville, Montana, when he was working on that, or maybe it was right after he was working on it. But yeah, fascinating article. Fascinating
Actually,
guy.
I reviewed Teguero, which is one of Sasha Siemel's books. And, that was another one where, there's some archery in it, but, he hunted jaguars with, sometimes firearms, sometimes a longbow. And then also he's famous for, taking charges with that spear.
Yeah.
And, Tom, that guy was just, beyond nerves to, plant that thing and take a charge from a jaguar. But when you read his book, I mean, he was after some really, really naughty cats, cats that not only kill a lot of people, but, kill cows, everything. So, the thing about jaguars is they have an attitude I think the other cats don't have, because I've worked with all the big cats in my past life, and jaguars just they aren't afraid of anything. And I think it's somewhere in the DNA that in Africa or Asia, a lion or a tiger or a leopard, they've got to get out of something's way sooner or later, because there's something bigger than them. There's a rhino, there's a hippo, there's an elephant, there's somebody bigger than them. There's nothing tougher in the South American jungle than a jaguar. He's the king. Nothing touches him. So I think that's why they have this bulletproof attitude.
And what's a full grown jaguar weigh?
A big one can push 3. and granted, compared to adult male lion, adult male tiger, that's can be 150 pounds lighter or more. But a jaguar is just they are just dynamite. They are just totally fearless. They don't care about anything. They show, you've really got to know them. A lot of people say jaguars don't show emotion. When you work around them, you can see it. But yeah, they're tough. They're tough animals.
And so Sasha, one of the things he was famous for was invoking a charge and using a specially made spear. It would plant the spear in the ground, right, and raise the tip to meet the charge. And then it had a big hook either side. There's a good word for it, like on a knife, but so that the cat wouldn't slide all the way down the spear. Correct. Yeah.
Correct. Actually, Gene Wenzel, because very few people have a good clean cover of it, because I don't. Actually, he found Don and I a good clean cover scan. That's what we used in the magazine.
He was in touch, if I remember correct. Gene was in touch with Sasha's wife.
Yes, that was in the article. That's correct.
Yeah. So if you've got the cojones to invoke a charge and to meet it with a spear, I wonder if that guy ever experienced target panic. Now, how is that for a segue?
Did you just think that up right now?
I did, man. I did.
That's pretty good.
We won't go down that road yet, but yeah. So you used to work with big cats.
Yep, whole different life, but yep, we did.
How many years did you do that?
Till I don't know. I started when I was a teenager and worked hands-on with big cats till I pretty much was almost out of the business a few years ago. So, yeah, I work with mostly leopards, some with tigers, a little bit jaguars, cougars. But the thing about the cats is I've worked with a lot of different animals, but when you get to hands-on work with big cats, that's, I worked in the zoo stuff too, and managed zoos and all, but nothing comes close to the relationship with big cats. And yeah, it's dangerous, and yeah, you can get hurt, and I've been hurt, but it just, you can't really understand the animal until you're in there with them.
Now, you were actually in cages with these cats. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did shows for years. That's what I was known for, is just, the one-on-one training. But the difference is I had a real good rapport with my animals. I could get close to every cat I've ever worked with, and not every trainer can say that, because you look at a lot of the old school stuff, and the cats were hanging off their pedestals, just, looking for him. But for me, it was befriending the cats. And I think that makes a difference, and it made a difference in the show, that the audience sees that there's a connection between, me and these animals. And it helps deflect a lot of the, oh, you're forcing them to do something, you're making them. No, you can't make anything do anything when it comes to a big cat. You've got to work with them so they want to.
Do you think it was your personality, your approach, or both that developed that relationship?
It's, some people are just born for something. And for me, it was just, being a cat guy. I think they pick up on that, the fact that I could work with, so many different species and excel with all of them. Leopards will always be my favorite, but, it's just a matter of understanding or wanting to understand the animal and why. I was into it for the sake of the animals and the relationship, and that's what you see a lot more with trainers than, say, 8 to 5 zookeeper who, you can be fine at husbandry and take care of your animals, but until you've actually worked side by side with them, you don't know. You don't know. You don't really know.
Did you ever have a whole crap moment where you're in there with them and you just look and you see their attitude change and you're like trying to regain control? Or
yeah, I mean, you're going to have times where they're big cats and you put a bunch in an arena together. There's personality conflicts, and there's going to be dust ups and there's going to be fights, and sometimes you get hurt. But that's what you're there for. Because it's. I won't lie, it's a rush being in there with a bunch of cats. But
when you say a dust up in a fight, you're talking cat to cat.
Cat to cat.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're willing to go to take it all on, don't go in there. Go do something else because you're not ready for it. When two adult tigers get into it, if you can't wade in there and separate them, then you're not the guy.
Well, I'll be eating popcorn watching you, Dave. It's just jogging my memory. Years ago, I'd been around a handful of mountain lions, treed, run into them. One year I ran into 7 different lions, in their expressions, their body language, their eyes, their face. One year I was calling a bull and I had a bull, 15 yards, 20 yards in front of me, stiff wind in my face. Trying to get a shot, couldn't get a shot. I heard something behind me. I thought, well, geez, how'd that bull get behind me? And why isn't he winding me? Because it was a stiff wind. And I turned around to see a young subadult lion crouched, 20 paces behind me. And I was so shocked, it was the last thing I expected. But I could never get his eyes. That cat's eyes were something I'd never experienced before. He was just in a different mode, just deep and locked on. Now, like I said, I'd seen plenty of lions in trees and stuff, but so I stood up and managed to change his mind. But then his expression changed completely, so I felt like I went from on the dinner plate to, oh, crap, what is that, That was amazing, just to look in their eyes.
Yeah, that's a real interesting story, and I'm glad it ended well for everybody. But I've talked to other people who've had similar circumstances, and actually a member of our state club had an incident similar to that out in Colorado, and somebody else said, "Well, you should have just shot that cat," But if the cat wanted you, it would have had you.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't have known it was there until it was there. So, sometimes in your case and others, it was just, it's curiosity. What is that? They're able to discern all this stuff, and, you standing up and you looking authoritative, that's sometimes that's enough for them. But then again, sometimes it's not. Yeah.
Well, there was no doubt who was going to win this. I got mad. I firmly was going to drive the tip of that bow right through that lion. It was just like, oh yeah, it was cool. It was fun. That's not why we're here though.
No,
that's not why we're here.
We digress.
Yes. I don't know about digress. I find all of your stories fascinating. I mean, what There's lots of plumbers, there's lots of hydro operators, there's lots of mechanics in the world. There's very dang few. I don't know what you call yourself, a lion trainer, a lion keeper.
Big cat trainer back in the day.
Big cat trainer. Just not the mouse. You don't want to be known as the mouse.
No, we don't.
So David, you and I had discussed a little bit. We were shooting the breeze about your journey, and it came up that you had written an article that I recalled for TBM called "There and Back," and it discusses your recent journey, going struggles with shooting a traditional bow, switching back to a compound, and then regathering yourself and heading full charge back into it. And I thought it was such an appropriate topic with so many new people coming into traditional archery. And today it can look very easy. Guys like Aaron Snyder and Jake Downs, and throw the name out there, Denny Sturgis, Randy Cooling, Jim, Brian. A lot of those guys make it look very easy, but we just like to have a candid conversation in the struggles.
Yeah, it's just and when I don't know all those guys, but I've read some writings, but it can, as you say, look easy. You look on social media and people are posing with this moose or that elk or that African game, and it's not a piece of cake. And a lot of these people, even these names have had their struggles as well. But it's I guess how you face them, how you take it on, and how you assimilate what got you to whatever meltdown you might have occurred, and then how do you turn the show around and get it back on course. And there's a lot of ways to do that too. But I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because there's I've always the way I write is honest, and the way I talk is, and I think there just needs to be more of that. It's not a piece of cake. And I know the struggle stick word is out there, and some people take offense at that, but it's part of the journey. I don't know a lot of people who it's been they pick up a traditional bow on point A and it goes smooth sailing to point Z. No, it doesn't. It's such a mental game. When I shot a compound, once that thing was tuned, my hand position's right, and the peep sight and my front sight are lined up, the arrow's going there. It's going to go there. But with somebody, forgive me, I can't recall which author, but sometime back in TBM, might have been Wayne Van Zwolle, said, there's a drawing, shooting, releasing, there's a lot to pack and unpack.
Yeah.
With a trad bow in a matter of seconds. And it's like, I thought that, and I was like, that's spot on. But, no matter whether, you're gapping or instinctive, there's a lot going on between your ears. And that's where most of it is, at least me, any breakdown, meltdown I've had it's between the ears, because all that then translates to the mechanical end of it. And it's just through, getting that. For me, it's just, I need to shoot a lot. I know people who can leave a bow for a couple months and come back and they're right into it. I'm one of those guys who needs to shoot a lot. And when I shoot a lot, I'm a whole lot better.
I'm sure I'll get in trouble from a few people, but I always likened it to, traditional archery equipment in shooting traditional archery is to me, it's like 80% mental, 20% equipment. Where shooting a compound, I feel like it's 80% equipment, 20% mental. And I'm sure I'll get flamed for that, but no, it is. And I'm one of these guys that I can put it down for a few months, and sometimes that's healthy for me, and start fresh. But so how long have you been bow hunting? How long has what's your hunting journey looked like?
I'm a late bloomer, and actually some years ago I wrote a piece in TBM called Late Bloomer. I didn't start picking up the whole outdoor lifestyle until I was in my mid 30s. And I just when I was a kid, I always shot bows in the backyard, and I bought I had a bear grizzly I bought with lawn mowing money back in the mid 70s, and you would shoot in the backyard. And we were maybe even ahead of our time. My best buddy, Dr. Paul Pfeiffer, he lives up in Ohio. This is back in like 75. There was this big vacant area. We called it the islands, where people took their grass clippings and stuff out of the neighborhood in Ohio. And we painted animals on the front of newspaper sacks and stuffed them full of newspaper, and we set them in the bushes around the perimeter of this island. So it was like our primitive 2D course. We thought we were so clever for thinking that up, as 14-year-old kids. But then once I started training cats when I was 18, I didn't, and I also was a hardcore skateboarder in my teens. But once I started training cats and doing that, everything else was just on the back burner, and that's all I did, was just work and train and do animal stuff. So finally, I think I was around 90, 94. My mom said, "You just work too hard. Why don't you find a hobby?" So about that time, Paul moved back from Alaska. And the guy he bought his vet practice from in Toledo, actually made longbows, was a hunter. So that was like Paul's reconnection. And so Paul got connected back to archery again. And by virtue of that, I did as well, even though I was just up there in the summers. And, I came back here to Florida that fall of 94. And we had gone up that September to a bow shop in Michigan. It was actually part of a hardware store in Blissfield, Michigan. And Keith, the manager of the bow shop, they had Jeffrey recurves on the wall, and they were beautiful, and I loved them. And I just couldn't afford one at the time. I just had gone through a divorce and was, just living paycheck to paycheck, and it wasn't going to happen. But Keith went in the back and goes, "I got this old Hoyt compound, a couple of years old. I'll sell it to you dirt cheap." So that was my first bow. And for some reason, I forgot that old Bear Grizzly was hanging in the barn down south. I just hadn't touched it in so long. I blanked out on that, and I didn't find it till years later. So when I got back into it, it was compound, and then shot it for a while. And then one of my employees brought Traditional Bowhunter magazine to work one day. He goes, "I think you'd like this." And I opened up. I go, "I'm home. This
Nice.
is it." And so I'm looking through advertisements and found Archery Traditions, Dan Quillian's shop in Athens, Georgia, ordered a Patriot recurve, and that was the beginning of my traditional roller coaster.
Yeah, Dan Quillian, that's when I was getting into stick bows. I must have looked the ink right off the pages. I never did pull the trigger on. I remember the Patriot. I remember a cane break. He was a colorful individual.
Yeah, I never met him in person. His son Didi would come down to shoot with us in our shoots in Silver Springs, Florida. But I did talk with Dan on the phone one time before he passed away, because he wrote a really good piece in TBM called "Deer Don't Die in Bed." It was about the reality of hunting and animals and so forth. Basically, it's not Disney, it's not Bambi out there. Never was, never will be. And I was just always fascinated with the piece, and I was just looking for something for our state magazine to add a little to an issue. And so I found him on the phone and said, can I use this piece? I think it's always going to be relevant. And he, immediately granted permission, and we chatted for a bit. And it turned out that he was a early adopter of the tranquilizer gun using on whitetail deer in Georgia for, I believe, relocations at the time. And there was a connection because my dad in the 60s was one of the first ones to use the tranquilizer gun. So, we had a nice conversation. So I never met him in person, but it was nice to meet him on phone.
Oh, no, that's cool. That's cool. So you pick up the stick bow, and did you have any instructions, or what was your course to learn? What was your learning path?
My learning path was pretty much a mess. Nobody down by us was shooting one. And actually, once I got one, several of my friends started buying trad bows. They were compound shooters, but they saw I was having, it's not easy, but I was having fun trying. So they're like, "Okay, we're going to get this. We're going to get one of these too, so we can, shoot with Dave like that." So that was a matter of just trial and error. And finally the arrow starts to go where you want it. But, eventually I found G. Fred Asbell's books and videos, and, that was the thing. Everybody was looking at that then. And, I know, gap shooting was there. I it never tripped my trigger to do that. I was just following the Asbel stuff, and when it worked for me, it really worked well. So that's just the way I kept at it as an instinctive shooter. And that's for me, it's that, you've got to live with that thing. You've got to live with that thing to, and at least in my case, as I said, to be a good, consistent shot. So, I started shooting, hunting, 3D shoots, hunting some hogs, a few whitetails. And then I probably 2000, well, actually I went and shot a Pope and Young size black bear in Saskatchewan in 2005. And, I mentioned that in the article. I was still shooting pretty good at the time, but after that, it just seemed to start unraveling. So a couple of years later, I'm in Colorado and, missed a couple mule deer, and I thought, I got a problem here. And that's when I should have looked for coaching. I should have just looked for coaching, but instead I just bailed and went compound for a while.
Yeah. So when you picked up a compound, did you figure you were going to just, you were just done with a stick bow, or were you just taking a break? Or?
I saw the compound as a tool to keep me in the woods, because I love the outdoors. I love hunting. I love just being there. And to me, that was just a vehicle just to be in the woods. And I know people have just totally dropped it and never come back. And there's guys who just drop in and just become gun hunters. And, I've shot some stuff with a gun, just doesn't do anything for me. I mean, would I rather gun hunt than do chores around the house? Yeah, probably. But it's not the same. It's just not the same. A deer or a hog at 100 yards has no idea you're there. Bam, they're down. It's still hunting, but it's just the rush that up close and personal with a bow is just not there. So I thought, well, somewhere in between is the compound bow. So I got one. It's pretty darn accurate. You can say everything about them, but the accuracy is kind of intoxicating when you can make these, $50 sized groups at 50 yards. Because I had that when Hoyt had the first carbon bow, and they had that partnership out there with Trek Bicycles and that tubular bow. I had one of those, and I shot it well. I shot it real well.
That's not a pun. That's a real deal, right? It's not a pun that that Hoyt had a deal with a bicycle company.
Yeah. It was the bicycle tube, bicycle frame technology was in that first carbon bow.
Full disclosure. I was shooting a bow. I think I started when I was 11 or something like that. Shot compounds, because that's all I knew. Had a golden eagle, worked my way up to a golden eagle, completely untuned. I didn't know anybody that tuned bow. I didn't know you needed tuned. And probably 1989, I think I missed a little mule deer buck. Just completely blew it. I was just so frustrated. I was working in the backcountry later the next year, and I had a buddy send a bear takedown in and put it together, yanked the string back, and I drilled a dried, white dried vertebrae up on a hillside and destroyed the arrow. And I was like, man, I can hit stuff with this. So it was kind of funny because I made the change because I just couldn't hit anything with a compound. Was never tuned, it was just a pile, and I struggled for, gosh, that would have been 12 years or something. But in 2016, my shooting was degrading, and I just same thing. I wanted to be in the woods. I was so frustrated with my shooting. I bought a compound, I bought a Matthews, and I hunted in 2016 with a compound. And I can tell you, I was scared to death carrying that thing around the woods. I don't know how the sights and pins and all that stuff don't get trashed, and it was a blast shooting in the yard, 60 yards, just drilling stuff. It was a kick in the pants, but it was what I needed at the time. I needed to put the stick bow down and kind of regroup. And Yeah, I actually sold I sold all that compound stuff to fund this podcast, actually. Come full circle there. So when you're shooting a compound, you still yearning to get back, or was it the challenge you missed, or a feeling of failure, or to get back to the stick bow?
It was, you missed the challenge, and also I think you missed the oneness with your equipment. I don't have to tell anybody listening to this podcast that a compound feels like a thing, whereas a longbow recurve feels a part of you. There's just some connection about a traditional bow that just it's when you're shooting well and you're into it. It feels like a part of you, and that's what you want. You don't want it to become this alien thing that you feel like it's shooting you and not vice versa. So the compound, it's just kind of a machine. But when I kind of had a confessional with with my meltdown, and actually I wrote a piece that ended up in Peterson's Bow Hunting called "Changing Horses," and that was my first part of the struggle, was going from traditional and how much I loved it to a compound, getting used to that, but finding success. And then, so that's why I thought, okay, how do you write the reverse of that? Because there are so many articles, Don can tell you, he gets so many things, I used to shoot a compound. Now I hate compounds. Now I love trad. That's been ground's been covered a lot, but the way I wrote There and Back was a different take on it, going there, being there, and then coming back to me home in the traditional world. So I think to that point, Don was interested in how I wrote the thing, and other than TBM, I don't know what other magazine would have taken it. So I kind of wrote it for that audience, because I knew, talking with other people, I was not alone out there. But I think the struggle needed a voice that hadn't been said quite that way.
So what was the issues you were having with your shooting?
Define it any way you want. It was, was it target panic? I never really felt like I was falling apart. I just felt like I was not in control of my shots. I feel like I was just rushing the shot, not coming to full draw, not really taking all those components and putting them together the way you should. So, I was just snapping it. I mean, it's just, coming an inch or two, off anchor and just letting it go. But for a long time, I got away with it. I think that was a problem, is I got away with it for a while, whether it was in the woods or on a 3D or whatever. I got away with it. And I think that kind of kept me going without really stopping in my tracks and trying to break it all down and then put it back together in a constructive way. But when you're sitting out there in ground blind Colorado and you miss a couple of deer at a shot you should have been making, that's when I knew I had a problem, and that's what I should have got some real coaching and did not. So I guess not to rush to the end of anything, but anybody out there having these problems, find, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a professional coach. It'd be just a great shooter who can help you get better. So don't be afraid to go looking for that resource.
Did you ever try at that point in time? Did you try? You obviously know what the problem is. Did you try putting a clicker on, or?
I did, actually. I did, and it worked for a while, and then I just went back to snapping again. But yeah, I did use a clicker for a while.
Yeah.
And they do work, but and I maybe didn't give enough of a chance. I had at the time I probably had 4 or 5 bows. I put a clicker on one of my widows, and I was out in the woods, and I know I killed a gray squirrel one morning. 14 yards, it's a pretty good shot on a squirrel. I broke it over. The clicker went off, and I killed I killed one wild pig, I think, with the clicker too. And then I just started snapping again, which again, my bad. Should have gave it more of a chance.
Yeah. I've messed with the clicker, and they're a fascinating tool. It's really cool, but it didn't take me long to where I felt like it was starting to start to induce some target panic. And maybe that's just in my head, but you know, I got to where I was waiting for it, you know, like it was creating some anxiety, waiting for it to click. So I'll still put one on because, man, you talk about keeping you honest and and hit and draw. I'd like to come up with a more solid anchor than what I got right now, just a anchor spot. But yeah, you know, in this piece you mentioned short drawing, target panic, buck fever, failure to pick a spot. They're all in one. They're all really one in the same, in the reality that these afflictions prevent the hunting archer from reaching full draw, full concentration, or the full dynamic power of the bow. I mean, to me, it jumped off the pages to me because I see a lot of people put target archery is fun, fine, it's awesome. But it seems to be a real focal point of hunting for some people. Well, to me, you can shoot a 260, a 270, and a 300 round and still be very susceptible to all what you wrote right there when the time comes for the animal to be in front of you. Just jumped off the pages. Like, to me, that's not just indicative to shooting. That is indicative to hunting, to being able to hold your crap in a nicely tight package, you know, when you're trying to make the shot. Did you find that was, I mean, it manifested itself greatly in front of critters, right?
Yeah, or it gets to the point where, you know, this anxiety of, oh, there's a deer. The deer's coming closer. Am I going to get a shot? What's going to happen when I shoot? You know, am I going to blow it? But you know, that fine tuning, that focus is there, and I think that's one of the biggest things is just reaffirming that it's there, and you know how to find it. You know, and you know that go switch, and knowing, you know, when to do it, when to take care of it or not. So I think that was a thing is, you know, I talked about the bear hunt, you know, in that piece of, you know, within a matter of minutes, blowing it and then putting it back together again. So, you know, right then, you know, as I said in that article, it was the best and worst of traditional bow hunting within a matter of minutes, how you can completely screw something up, but then, you know, reprogram it, put it back out and make it happen. So, you know, that was kind of proof right there that I still had it. You just got to have it all the time.
So in that, you had missed a bear on a bait. It ran off and you were completely disgusted. But then you got a second chance and you anchored it, right? You made a great shot.
Yeah, the first shot I blew it. You know, it's just, you know, I'm not talking out of, not telling myself, it was right there in the piece. You know, I shot high on, and it was a non-lethal wound, and he ran away, and I was just feeling absolute dirt. Spent all this money practicing my butt off, and you know, I passed up a couple other bears until this bruiser went in, and I just completely trashed the opportunity. And you know, you're sitting there alone, just you and the mosquitoes in the Saskatchewan woods, and you know, it's 9 o'clock at night, still broad daylight because it is up there that time of year, and you're trying to break down how this happened, what disaster you just caused, and then you hear a stick break behind you, and he came back. And I've talked to people who understand bears probably perhaps way better than I would, and the conclusion was he was at the bait and he probably thought somebody cheap shot him. Who the hell did that? I'm coming back to get you. So when he came back, there was no arrow in him. He got it out, or it fell out, and he was non-scathed when he came lumbering back in. But he didn't come in the way he came before. He came in and made a big circle, so he was definitely checking the area out to see if whoever tagged him was still there and what he was going to do about it. So when he came in and came around from a different side, I had a super short window. There was an opening between two jack pines, and that's when it all came back together the way it's supposed to, and I've got a bear.
My second shots, when I read that and I kind of running through my head, my second shots have always, I'm going to think about that before I say it's always, I find often that if I have to take a second shot that's rushed, that's generally the times that I make the best shots. And I think I heard an archery coach one time poo-poo muscle memory, right? You don't want to be shooting from muscle memory. And to me, it's exactly the opposite. Like a quarterback, they don't think about their arm motion. And I'm not using the quarterback for any reason other than just somebody that practices a technique. And the way I shoot, if I think about my anchor, if I think about my bow arm, it's probably not going to be a good shot. But, like, oh, crap, I got to get a second arrow. And, you hit anchor, it's on its way, and it's flipping amazing, this shooting you could do when I get myself out of the way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when, especially on, bear or big hogs, when, you're getting good penetration, you've got to have hit a decent anchor,
Oh, yeah.
To drive in my case, shooting 600 some grain, carbon arrow. So it's, with some decent FOC. So, but, when you knock down some big pigs and stuff, you got to be doing something right. So it's there. And I kind of think you're right when it comes down to, flipping the switch. It's just it's that repetition. I've done this before, and I think that's what you subconsciously fall back on to make it happen the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, I've dabbled in some of the and I use dabble very loosely because I really haven't given any other shooting technique a real chance. I've messed with gap shooting a little bit, not with face walking, but I've messed with gap shooting a little bit. But I really feel like the way I shoot, and I'm going to call it instinctive. The more I can concentrate on the spot I want to hit, generally the better shot it is. I feel like for my style of hunting, that is the most effective method of aiming, if you will. Now, if all I did was hunt from a tree stand and had known distances, which I do sometimes, but it had known distances, I think maybe face walking, string walking, or something like that would be, might be the way to go. But, a lot of my stuff is on the ground and, it happens fairly fast. I see in today's world, the new crew coming in, it's almost hostile towards instinctive shooting, like we're talking, like the Aspel method. Sure, it has some downfalls and stuff, but sometimes I get a little frustrated when the comment was made one time, well, what do you have against hitting what you're aiming at? And I was like, man, how long you been doing this? Because, why don't you ask Jim Eckhout or Brian Burkhart or Monty Browning or, fill in the blank, Randy Cooling, Denny Sturgis, the amount of animals those guys have collectively put on the ground. And pretty sure they don't, well, maybe Denny does a little bit, but, Jim, Brian, those guys, they're instinctive shooting. They don't even know what their arrows weigh, So yeah, I get a little frustrated sometimes when I hear people downplay the effectiveness of the way you and I shoot.
Yeah, you look at all these folks. There's there's a lot of memories on their walls. So yeah, you're right. It does work, but there's a number of ways to shoot a bow. It's what you're comfortable with and what works for you. And you get try different stuff. I've probably didn't give gap enough. Dabbled in it, but it's what you're comfortable with, and then find that, and then keep at it. Don't let it go. Just keep at it.
I hope we make it. We got a little while longer to go. My lights are flickering. That wind is roaring out there. I highlighted another little section of your article you wrote where you quoted Daryl Cordet,
Keydort, yeah.
Keydort.
Yeah.
When he says he had a article, you mentioned beating the monkey about the not so funny topic of target panic. It says, quote, I cured my target panic by bearing down mentally, talking myself through the shot, and consciously regaining control of the mental part of archery. And man, that is a weighty phrase right there. The mental part of archery.
Yeah, I don't know Daryl, but I know people know him, and he's one of those guys that says he doesn't see the arrow, and and I really don't either. People say, how can you not see it? It's right there in front of you. It's right there, on the shelf. But when I know I'm in the good zone where I need to be, and all I'm seeing is what I want to hit. That's as Asbel said, how accurate can you be? It's like, how hard can you concentrate? How well can you concentrate? And that's what it comes down to, is that concentration, that fixation on what you want to hit. And it's just, when you can do that, the arrow's going there. And I don't care if it's 10 yards or 30, as you said, that quarterback or somebody shooting 3-pointers, whatever, that muscle memory, that repetition, it's going to kick in. Your brain says, I've done this before.
I've mentioned it probably 3 times through the history of this podcast, and I'll mention it again. I get heat every time that I mention I killed an elk. My first elk I killed, it's a downhill shot, fairly steep downhill. And there's been conflicting reports at the distance. My friend that was with me said 70 yards, which I completely think is horse crap. I want to say it was more like 45, but the arc of the arrow, it was, had I known, if I even thought it was 45, I would have never shot. But the animal, I already know if the animal gets to that point, I'm going to shoot him and I'm going to kill him. I'm not shooting at him. I'm going to kill him. And I anchored, and thank God that I still have this, the memory is burned in my brain. I can still see the white fletching, what looked to be a mile over that elk's back. And I thought to myself, dang, I just shot over it. And then it just drops right in. And the elk runs about 80 yards, piles up. And later on, when we discovered how far it was, but I guess I was a little bit shocked. And but my point is, again, instinctual. I don't know where that animal, I don't know a distance. I just know I'm going to hit it. And so the way your mind works, right? My arms, my body knew the trajectory of the arrow. My conscious thought process was, oh crap, we just shot over it. But muscle memory knew where to go.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It wasn't 70 yards. Jake Strohmeyer is, he speaks with forked tongue. So you got back on track.
Yeah, I finally just had enough. I think with the compound, I shot 9 whitetails and 6 hogs and some stuff in Africa. So, and I was done. It's like, I get it. I'm over it. Let's go home. Let's get rid of this. So it wasn't a matter of hanging it up. It was just selling it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be tempted. So it was gone. And, I found, actually a guy out in, Montana had, just ordered a new gray bark widow and had an injury and couldn't shoot it. So I picked up a 2-month-old bow, not a scratch on it, for a heck of a price. It was just like a homecoming, having a widow in your hands again. And then, since then I've ordered my own custom one. So, but it's just, with rebuilding a new career midlife, I've, a lot of times, I'm doing real estate photography. So a lot of times I'm shooting in the day and editing pictures at night, and I'm out there sometimes at midnight shooting in the garage. That was the only time of day I can do that sometimes. But I'll tell you what that's good for is it's good for just that muscle memory and the technique and everything that is eventually going to put itself together in the woods. It's a good thing to just be shooting up close, not worrying about anything but your form. And right now I feel like my form is better than it's ever been, because that's what I'm doing. I'm just going out there shooting super close, a bag target in the garage after dark. And I just feel like I've got my best anchor ever. And there's certain little nuances that you still want to, tinker around with. People pick on the Asbel style for the bending in the knees. That works for me. If I slightly bend my knees, my arrows go way better. I feel for some reason, as I'm bending my knees, I'm getting more back tension. It just all seems to assimilate somehow. And I don't know why that is. I know G. Fred talks about it too, but there's just something about my knee bending and the way it helps get your shot lined up. So, people can pick on it, but it works for me. I know it does.
Yeah, I agree. Shooting a straight up and down bow. And again, I don't want to come across like I'm hacking on anybody's form, because get out there and shoot, more power to you. Just talking about what works for me. But shooting a straight up and down bow, I end up shooting from my knees quite a bit, be it elk hunting or, fill in the blank. How you would, especially my size, what did Southcock said one time? He doesn't cast a long shadow, which I'll fall into that group. I love that statement. But shooting a bow straight up and down, especially from your knees, I'd be digging up turnips doing that.
Yeah, the whole canting. I've got to camp that bow, just get everything out of my way. I think it just, especially for instinctive, it just opens everything up. So you're just totally fixated on what you want to hit. You're not seeing anything else. At least in my case, that's what works.
Yeah. And you working on your shot to this day? Is there anybody specifically you like follow, or books you read, or DVDs, or?
I've shot with some really good people in traditional bow hunters of Florida. We've got some, back when I was president, and, some of my woods mentors, guys that, helped me, get into the woods and understand deer sign, what you're looking for and stuff. John McCormick and my friend Ronnie Weatherman, who's passed away a couple of years ago. These are hardcore guys who were not only good on the range, but not good with target bows, soda straw arrows. These guys, hunting rig bows would just smoke you. Smoke you. Ronnie, I don't know if it's still going on. There's a big shoot up in Elberton, Georgia, at the Robin Hood range, and if you win, you get your name chiseled on a boulder. And,
wow.
Ronnie went up there 3 times. His name's on the rock 3 times. John went up there once. His name's on the rock. These guys are just, I put them up against anybody.
Wow.
They're just outstanding traditional shooters with hunting gear. And, you watch guys like that, and you kind of study your form, and, you try to pick up the best of, what you think works for them, and then turn around and what part of that works for you. And John in particular has this, I don't do it that way, but he does. He gets to like a 7th, 8th draw, but he doesn't let go. He just gets there, and then he does this extra pull, and he pulls through it, and that arrow just, it's going. Yeah. It's just an interesting way to shoot, but he's not short drawing. He just gets it back, and then like a second pull through the shot, and it's gone.
Wow. He must get to that spot and then start his concentration or his aim, and then pull through the shot. That would take some practice.
It does. And it all happens in a matter of seconds, but he's wicked. He is wicked. And these guys, Ronnie, when he was live, longbow recurve, he mainly hunted with a Blackwidow recurve, but here in Florida, Ronnie would get 4 to 6 whitetails a year with traditional gear.
Wow.
On public land too. That's commitment, and it's good shooting.
Yeah, to me, not only is that good shooting, but that's good hunting. Right?
Absolutely.
And there again, I feel like that gets lost a little bit with now a lot of the younger crowd that's moving up has been successful with a compound, and I didn't have that, but so these guys are not coming in green, but I just think that sometimes there's not enough emphasis put on the woodsmanship and the hunting aspect. But speaking to the shooting, I have a friend who's I'm trying to get on here again, is Pete Weatherford. he's 81, 82 now, but just self-taught and just an incredible shot. I mean, incredible. And he's been that way for years. Very seldom did he ever go to a 3D shoot and not win. Just in a purely instinctive shooter, whether it was 45, 50 yards into 12 yards, back out to 20 yards, just consistent. He was amazing. He is amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned what I referred back to. I'm sorry, I wasn't working around that question. I went back to, a lot of G. Fred's books and just started, dog earing certain pages and, watch the video again, because again, there's a lot of ways to shoot out there. That's what I like. And that's the angle that I prefer to shoot. But there's some good stuff in his books. He has got, three, stalking still hunting is not, about the actual shooting about those other 3 books are. And there's some good nuggets in there, and I'd highlight and dog ear pages and refer back to that. Oh yeah, I forgot, because people say that he doesn't talk about technique as much as a lot of the gap proponents do. But when you go in there and look, he talks about everything they talk about. It's just in a different way. People say G. Fred doesn't talk about back tension. Yeah, he does. You read his books, he talks a lot about back muscles.
Yeah. One of the things, I don't remember what book it was in, but alignment for me, the light bulb went off when it was about having a door open, an open door, and then backing up to that door and leaning back on putting a weight on your back leg, putting your elbow out. And so you're putting your weight against that door. And if you're out of alignment, you're going to fall on your ass, right? You picture what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And for me, a light bulb went off with Fred's stuff for me. When I read that, I was like, oh, okay. Now I can see where, you're talking full alignment. So just little nuggets like that when it's not real bright up there upstairs in my hair-covered computer or gray-haired covered computer. So when the light goes off, it gets pretty shiny in there. So what's your equipment today? What are you shooting today?
I've got this gray bark widow, and then I've got a new custom PSA with it's got a Caribbean rosewood riser, and then the spalted mango limbs. It's beautiful. I
didn't realize you were a widow guy. People are going to start thinking that I only have Black Widow people on here.
I've shot a lot of different bows, and there's a lot of great bows out there. We all know that, but for me, I like what they make. I like the people that run the company, and a lot of it comes down to personality of the bowyer, customer service, reputation. There's a lot of history there. So, but I've shot other bows, but right now those are my 2 bows.
I mentioned that I work nights. I woke up this morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock, rolled over, checked my phone, what time it was. And Trent Wingard at that time called me. So I'm just laying in bed. I answered the phone. He said, "Hey, remember you asked me about a 58-inch recurve? If I ever had one, you want to shoot one? I got one. You want to shoot it?" I was like, "Dude, don't. No, I don't. I don't need to buy another bow." So when you got the bow here, that's like the drug dealer calling you up saying, "Dude, I got some smack."
No, at the Compton Rendezvous up in Michigan, there's a lot of bows that I'd heard about, and just getting to go there and fondle them in person. So that's one thing about rendezvous and stuff is all the vendors there. But there's some gorgeous stuff out there. There really is.
Yeah, I get
those blacktail bows are so beautiful.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean those are works of art. I never saw one. Maybe a couple people in our club down here had them, but that's gorgeous stuff.
You guys get all these rendezvous happen around you guys, like Compton and what's that, ETAR, and all those. So it's a little bit rough being out west sometimes. Not during elk season, but when you want to go to these shoots. And so what I'm leading up to is we have the Western States Rendezvous coming to Montana this year. Pretty stoked about that. Montana has a very rich vein of bowyers throughout the Bitterroot Valley, shoot all the way to the east side of Montana. So I think this is just going to be a fantastic time. I'm really looking forward to it. So anybody listening to the podcast, you're in the Western United States, you better try and get there. What are we missing, man?
I guess it's don't be like Dave. Don't bail. I guess that's the take home. Is just I'm not bashing compounds because I shot them, and that's what most people do. But it's just if you're struggling, figure it out. Don't mess around like I did. I didn't find professional coaching. I went to a compound because I think once you're into trad, you're really into trad. Even if you take a detour like I did, it's just always there. Because of my dealings with Don in the magazine, I made him privy to some of my struggles and leading up to writing that article, which, it was years up to that article. Don's like, I get why you're doing it, but you'll be back someday. So yeah, he was right. Right. It just took a little bit of time. But I think, this is a great times for traditional archery. There's a resurgence in the late 80s, 90s, and I think we're seeing another renaissance again. Guys like Aaron Snyder, he's got a lot of proponents, and just like anybody else, he's got detractors, and that goes with it. We get that, but I think he's exposed, through his shelving compound and going trad, taking that challenge, and all his followers. I think it's been great for the sport to do that. I saw on YouTube or somewhere Donnie Vincent has been messing around with trad gear. So people say, why trad? I say, why not? Because it just gets to where, you see these guys on, I don't watch a lot of the outdoor channels because most of the shows I don't care for. But you just wonder with some of these people, and I know they're sponsored, et cetera, but how many things do you have to kill with a compound before you go, is there something else out there? I don't know why more people don't do it, just because, how many things can you kill with a compound before you go, okay, this is pretty darn easy. If you can do this time after time after time, there's got to be something else that maybe adds a little extra enjoyment and a whole lot more thrill to it.
Yeah. I would say, because I don't think traditional archery is for everybody. I don't think archery is for everybody. When, I've had very close friends of mine who have been lifelong compound hunters. We talk about the limitations of a stick bow, and anybody that's thinking about picking up a stick bow, the first thing I ask them is, hey, are you going to be able to watch, the biggest buck or the biggest bull or the biggest bear at 35 yards or whatever, 30 yards or 25 yards? If that's out of your maximum effective range, are you going to be mad? Or are you just going to go, wow, man, this is awesome, just a little closer? That right there tells me it might not be for you. That just comes along with the equipment. But
valid point. Absolutely. I've got a friend who, he's an excellent shot with a recurve, excellent, but he won't hunt with it because when he puts that compound in his hand, something gets in front of me, I'm going to get it. I will get it with a compound. I might get it with the recurve, but it just always frustrated me because he was such a good shot. And I know if he would have hunted once with that and gotten a deer or pig, he would have been hooked, but he just never got to that point. Yeah. But that was a guy who would have been great in the woods with trad gear, but he would never turn that corner.
And, the other thing I hope that we got out of this podcast was that it's not as easy as fill in the blank makes it look, right? Aaron, Brian, Jim, Monty, really resonated with me when 6 months ago, somebody sent me their first trad kill picture, and I don't remember what it was, a doe, buck, bear, I don't know, but the guy said, I finally got it done. And maybe I looked into it too far, but he seemed embarrassed when he said it took him 4 years. And I was like, buddy, You don't hunt in Idaho. I mean, so my point is, it's not instant gratification. You can just take what you see on Instagram and pitch it out the window. You go into it with realistic expectations, and you'll have fun. If you think you're going to be the next Aaron Snyder, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Hunt for yourself and enjoy the ride, because it really is the ride that you're supposed to be enjoying, and not the destination. So there, I'll get off my soapbox there.
No, not a soapbox at all, because there's just, it's the romantic side of trad. I think being in the woods, holding that longbow recurve, and even if it's a slow morning, shoot a judo at something before you get down out of your stand or your ground blind or something. I mean, that's the thing that we do that I think modern shooters don't have that. It's fun no matter what you're doing out there. It's not just lowering your compound to the ground and going home. It's it's stump shooting all the way to the truck. That's the cool stuff that trad is all about. That I think a lot of people don't realize about this style of shooting, that it's fun no matter what happens.
Yep, absolutely. And who wants to carry a 7 or 8 pound ugly baby around in the woods when you can carry a 3 or 4 pound cute baby, good looking baby in the woods?
Hey, I know. Hey, where I hunted, I was shooting compound. I was still living in South Florida. Yeah, my stand was 1.25 miles through knee deep water. Yeah,
whoa!
So I get hauling a heavy bow over your shoulder. Yeah.
You pull it behind you in a raft.
I did. It's funny that you say that. I did a piece that was in Bowhunter magazine, I think in 2014, maybe. It was called Another Man's Deer. And I sold Kurt on the idea, because there's only been a few articles ever about hunting deer in Florida in Bowhunter magazine. So Kurt bid at it. So I wrote the piece. And but there was a guy who let me use a picture, and he was in the Big Cypress in South Florida, and he was floating his deer out on a surfboard.
See, now I think TJ would have bid on that. He's a surfer.
Yeah, it was a compound story. So yeah, otherwise
he still might have. If it involved a surfboard, he might have.
Yeah,
you'd have had to go over Don's head, though.
Original, because you got to get them out of there, and it's in September. It's the thing's underwater, so you're trudging through water, and mosquitoes are thick, and kicking moccasins out of the way. It's pretty prehistoric.
Well, I am thankful for two things. Number one, your willingness to do this again, because we did this podcast a few weeks ago, and when I started editing it, I just didn't like the way the conversation flowed. It's a good mess. I feel like it's a really good message, and I think we did a better job with it this time. And secondly, I'm thankful that the power held out, because I would have been really bummed to tell you halfway through this, can we do it a third time? Cool, man. Well, enjoy yourself next week. I guess this podcast will be out when the time the Big Game Classic is over, but have fun. I really appreciate guys like you who step up and volunteer for positions like with Compton's and other organizations. So hats off to you. We work with the Florida Traditional Bowhunters, Compton's, and really enjoy your book review column.
Thank you. Yeah, you let the wolf thing go, but that's another time.
I get tired of talking about it.
I'm sure you do, but that's why I said at the end, that I understand frustrated voices, because we've gone through that with the repatriation of the Florida panther with Texas cougar genetics out here. So I've seen it on both sides when you reintroduce a large predator. So that's how I tried to write the piece.
Yeah. I don't think you would have the kind, speaking just from my experience here, I don't think you would have the pushback if realistic management occurred. But when you have to continually fight frivolous lawsuits, that's when you just like throw your hands in the air and go, you know what? You guys are all idiots.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's come to what somebody say the other day, triple B, ballot box biologist.
Yes.
It's a shame that it's come to that, because the general public has very little knowledge of how things work out in the real world.
Yeah, not only knowledge, a true appreciation, I would say, a realistic understanding. I mean, there's just so many adjectives you could put into that. I mean, guys like yourself, me, look at people that were, involved in the last 30 years that I've known personally that, you have a passion for, it's just not elk, it's all of the animals. And then suddenly you deal with somebody that hasn't left a boot track, in the West, having these pie in the sky ideas of what they think it's like. Well, it's not really what it's like, man.
We had one bear hunt here in Florida 5 years ago, the first time in a couple decades, and it was a mess. The hunt went on anyway, but there were people flying in from New York City to protest from some animal rights group up there. They have no idea. They're not even from here. They've never seen a bear in the wild in Florida. And just, it's just a shame that they could show up at game commission meetings and have a voice of something they know nothing about.
Yes, you just wrapped it up right there. That is the frustration. That would be another podcast.
Yes, sir, it would.
And maybe you and I could do something together in the future here. I enjoyed your time. I enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, I hope you're warm tomorrow, because it's going to be 8 degrees, blowing 40 here. So enjoy.
We're in the 80s already. Yep. It's going to be 90 next week.
Nice. Good for you. I like that for about 3 days. Take care, buddy.
Hey, man. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right.